Hello and welcome to this video and to June's book review. Being in July and having to do June is very confusing for my brain. I had a haircut, it's very short, we won't talk about that. And apologies if I have brownie around my face because I've just made those. But we're here to talk about books, and in the month of June I definitely slowed down after the reading challenge that I completed last month, and I'll link May's video up here if you're interested in that. But I still did manage to read 6 books, so I may have slowed, but it wasn't by that much. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about the 6 books that I read and you know, my thoughts on them. So the first book that I picked up in June was Fundamentally by, now I'm going to need to look this up because I'm not going to be able to pronounce her name, am I? So it's by Nussaibah Younis, and apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly. And I gave this book 3.5 stars. I believe it's the author's debut, and that might be part of the reason, because the concept of it is really interesting. We're following our main character who has this situationship breakup, and essentially she runs away to Iraq to work with the UN to run a scheme, whatever you want to call it, to rehabilitate's the wrong word, reintroduce ISIS wives to try and get them repatriated back. I would have liked way more of the stories of these ISIS women, some of who were trafficked, some of who went on their own free will, just a bit more about them and their stories, and then sort of the thoughts, the processes that they were having. But obviously our main character isn't part of that. She's obviously working with them, but she isn't, and we spend too much time in her head, obviously, because she's our main character, and I found her just so insufferably self-centered at times. There were these women that have gone through all sorts of traumatic things, and she was there just worrying about breaking up with a girlfriend. There was a lot more talk around, you know, religion, obviously, and family acceptance and that kind of stuff, and all of those aspects I liked. I just found our main character a bit self-centered, and I didn't feel that quite fit with the other aspects of the story that we had. The book is well written. It's obvious that our author, whose name I'm not going to try and butcher again, she, if I remember rightly from the author's note, she's worked in the UN and stuff, and you can tell that she has brought in some of her own experiences and knowledge and things like that. But again, in the author's note, she also explains where she's taken some sort of artistic license and changed some stuff and all of that kind of thing. It does have some wit despite the topics. There are some funny moments. Sarah as a character, I think that's the right name, she was interesting to read about and read from, well, not read from, but understand a bit more of. So there were definitely pockets of really good bits, but it's just our main character, and that's what brought the rating down for me, so that's why it was a 3.5 stars. So that was Fundamentally, and that was my book club pick for the month. So then the next book that I read is actually the oldest gift I think I had on my shelf, so I was determined to get to it this month, and that is The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman. It's they're here so I can have a look, it's the 4th in the Thursday Murder Club series, and the next one that I had to read. So in this we are with our group of friends. They live in a retirement village, so there's 4 of them that make up the Thursday Murder Club, and they go around investigating cold cases, or not so cold cases in the last few books, but they essentially solve crimes. The mystery element of this one I really enjoyed. We are looking into the death of an antiques shop owner, seller, who is also a friend of some of the members of the Thursday Murder Club, which is why they are so determined to find out what happened. But then it brings in sort of art fraud and drug dealers and all of this kind of stuff as well. It's not a spoiler, it's all on the blurb. and I enjoyed all of those little elements coming in together for it, and sort of understanding the case and all of that kind of stuff. But obviously the main draw of these books is being back with the characters we know. Joyce has always been my favourite, but I found she was less like Joyce in this one. Understandably, by the fourth book, she's not gonna be seen as this like sweet old lady who's underestimated, which is what I love about her in the first couple. But obviously the people that she interacts with largely, they all know her now, so they know what she's capable of. So Joyce is not quite Joyce in this, if that makes sense. I still enjoyed her, and I still liked the points where we're in her brain and her letter writing and stuff, but it didn't quite have the same draw. There is also a large storyline in this with dementia, so if you've read the others in the series, you'll know what I'm talking about. But that storyline plays a big part in this book, and thankfully I've never had to experience it, but I feel like it was handled well in this book. But I can't talk to experience or anything like that. But if it is something that may cause upset or whatever, then maybe look into the trigger warnings for this book, because as I say, it is a big part of this story. And it being the fourth in the series, there's not a lot more I can tell you without giving things away. I gave it 4 stars. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the next one. And yeah, The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman, and an enjoyable read. In fact, most of the books this month have been 4 stars, so my next 4 stars was actually an audiobook, and I listened to The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden. So I read the first one back in January, so I'll link that video if you're interested, and found that this was on my library app and was available at the point that I wanted an audiobook, so decided to give it a go. It's narrated by Lauren Ullman, who on the whole did a good job, although her Italian accent was a bit extreme to the sort of stereotyped. I'll say this is the sequel. I was never sure how they were going to make a series from The Housemaid, but we're back with our main character, whose name I can't remember, as she is working in another house and gets involved in another situation. Seeing as I read the first one in January, I thought I might remember it more, so I know there were definitely callbacks to it in the second book. They sparked little memories, but not enough for me to remember it, so that probably says a lot more about The Housemaid than this book, but that's part of it. It did have a twist that I wasn't expecting, so that's good. The Housemaid was a little bit more predictable. This one did have one that I wasn't anticipating. A couple that I were, but one that I wasn't, which is always fun. But there's this whole sort of sideline with a boyfriend where she hasn't told him about her past, and she goes on about it a lot in this book, and I did at one point just scream, "Just tell him then!" As I was listening to this book, so that frustrated me a bit as well. But on the whole, it's a solid thriller. It's an easy listen, and yeah, if you've read The Housemaid and you're intrigued by the second one, give it a go. So that's The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden. If you've been with me for the last few months, you could probably guess what the next book is, because I've been doing a reread of the Girls series by Jacqueline Wilson, so that I could pick this one up in June, which is Think Again. Thank you to whichever family member bought this for me for my birthday, because I didn't realise that it's actually a signed copy. So that was exciting when I realised that from the sticker in the front. And again, I gave this one 4 stars, as with a lot of the books this month. It's been a very good reading month. It's been very solid and consistent, and I've enjoyed most of what I've picked up, which is good. And this one is no different. I'd say this is the 5th, technically, book in the Girls series, but this is Jacqueline Wilson's first adult fiction, and we're following Ellie as she's turning 40, and, you know, what she's been up to in those years. My main criticism of the original series from like the 90s was that it was aimed for like older like YA, like 13, 14, but it was written too juvenile and that a lot of things were rushed. I didn't have that criticism at all with this one, which is good because I was a little worried that that might be the case for an adult Jacqueline Poston book. However, the like main storyline in this, I'm not sure how I felt about it. So the love interest, like the main love interest in this, I don't know, it's a bit of a weird choice, if I am honest with it. And again, this also had an element of me shouting, just tell him then, as she's, you know, contemplating whether to continue with the relationship or not. I like that we get little, you know, sprinkling of characters from across the series, and we see briefly how some of those are doing. But I did expect to have Magda and Nadine as bigger features in this book because they're her best friends from those books. And yes, they do appear, and they do appear a number of times in the story, but I thought they would have been a bigger part because they're a big part of that original series, and I wanted to know how they were getting on too, not just Ellie. In fact, Ellie's probably my least favourite of the three of them anyway. So one thing I will say, I suppose it's not surprising because of what the original series was, but Ellie is still very much weight conscious, and that is mentioned a lot in this book, which I know in this day and age is not appreciated as much. It was very much a 90s, early noughties thing to have in women's fiction, but nowadays people tend to DNF for that kind of reason. So I was surprised that that was the case. And as I said, she's not my favourite main character anyway, so she's another one that I find quite selfish, and I question some of her thought processes at times. But I really enjoyed it. It was nice to see where Jacqueline Wilson was taking it. I could have done with an epilogue, not gonna lie, but then maybe it's open for another one. And yeah, glad I've read it, and I'm very much intrigued to read the adult sequel to the illustrated mum now. Very much enjoyed it and liked the callbacks and things like that to it as well. Those two books were gifts, as was this one, and that Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. I worked out that if I read 2 gifts a month, then I will get through almost all of them by the end of the year, which is always my aim, and I haven't done it for the last couple of years. So I'm trying to make a conscious effort. But obviously with the reading challenge, I wasn't able to fit an edition, and I read a lot on Kindle last month. So I wasn't able to fit 2 in last month. So we did 3 this month. So Sounds Like Love was the next pick that I picked up. And again, 4 stars. I really like the concept that Ashley Poston comes up with. So her books are all romances, but they've all got a magical realism element. So this is no different. And in this we are following Joni, who is a songwriter, and she meets a really famous rock and roll star called Sebastian. They don't have a good first impression of each other, but then when they come out of their first original meeting, they slowly realise that they can hear each other in their heads, so they become telepathic with each other, which I think is an ingenious concept and great for a romance, because where are you going to hide if you can hear the thoughts? But that did then add to my confusion, and sort of my main issue with this book, I guess, is that obviously we are in Joni's mind for this book. She is the one telling us the story. However, he is supposed to hear her thoughts, but there is an awful lot that she thinks within this novel that he doesn't pick up on or hear. And that's where I got a bit confused, because is there a closing off feature that they don't just mention in this? I don't know, but that's where I got my main confusion from, because is she looking back and doing this, but then it didn't seem like it. Maybe I'm just thinking too much into it, which is also a possibility. But yeah, I was like, well, why can she think that and he not hear it at this point, but then as soon as she thinks something else, he hears it immediately. I'm like, I don't get the rules of this, but it is well done, and I really like Ashley Poston's writing, and it was entertaining. I didn't mean to go down a sort of dementia route this month, but this one also has a dementia storyline in it, with Joni's mum, and the relationship that she has with her mum, but also with all of like the other characters, side characters, so like her best friend, brother, dad. I really enjoyed that. I actually tend to prefer those kind of things in Ashley Poston books to the romance itself. I like the society that she creates, the family bonds, the relationships that we have, and also with this one, the little town that they're in, Vienna Shores, there we go. I really like that place. I'd like to visit. I don't think it exists, but I'd love to visit. I found that the setting of it was a real highlight for me, and you know, I wanted to go. I think because of my confusion and all of that kind of stuff, that's why it felt a little repetitive at times, and it did take me a bit longer to read than I expected. I thought it'd be a quicker, easier read than that, but on the whole it's a very solid romance and a really good book, and possibly my second favourite Ashley Poston. I'd have to think about that one a little more. As I said, another 4 stars, and one I enjoyed a lot. So the last book that I finished, technically I finished it on the 1st of July, but we're going to count it for June anyway because I read most of it there, and that's The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. So I read this on Kindle sort of sporadically through the month, as you know I've been doing, and I don't really know how I feel about it. So if you aren't aware, The Bell Jar is following our main character Esther as she's sort of deteriorating. Her mental health is deteriorating, she's spiraling into depression and things like that, and we follow that journey. I don't know whether it's the way I read it. Maybe it would have been better to read in one solid chunk, but I don't think I could have read it that way. I found it difficult to get into, and at points I thought that, you know, they're going on some long-winded story over here that isn't needed. It was also kind of confusing at times, but then I can't work out whether that is just the writing or whether that is a choice because of our main character's mental state throughout it, and whether it was done deliberately. Having realised how Sylvia Plath's life played out, it does read slightly differently for that, but yeah, I just don't know how I feel about it. I will say though, and one thing I'd heard about before going into this was about the fig tree analogy, and I wasn't entirely sure what people meant by that, but I really like it. It's essentially about deciding which fig you're going to pick from a tree, which one's going to be the best one, the juiciest one, the one that tastes nicest, and having real sort of decision paralysis around making that decision. And those figs essentially are the analogy of direction in your life. Where are you going to go? What career do you want to follow? Which partner are you going to go with? All of that kind of stuff, and just feeling the weight of the what if kind of thing, and I liked that. That's an analogy I will take away from the book, but on the whole, yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I gave it 3 stars. That could change once I've sort of mulled over it a bit more, but yeah, that was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and the last book that I read in June. So as I said, very solid reading month. We are now into July, new reading month. I have no challenges. I've only got a book club book to read, so let's see where we get to with that one. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've got any comments about the books that I've read or any that you see here, because this is my TBR, put them in the box below. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!